sat in this chair. Maybe not in fact, but certainly in spirit. That spirit that moves a man to say his piece, argue, agree, or sometimes follow a line of his own. You weren't alone. 430 million others were with you in that self-same spirit. These men who have been meeting here are our representatives, ministers from 15 countries. Busy men, each fully occupied with the affairs of his own country. Nevertheless, once or twice a year, they all come together to direct the policy of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or in short, NATO. So often, conferences between nations are scenes of frustration and disappointment, but occasionally a different mood prevails. Over these tables, discussion brings unity, agreement, and results. The Atlantic Alliance. A conception as impressive as the ocean whose name it bears, and already as resolute, as real. The peoples of 15 nations bound together in a firm belief that unity provides the best protection. Peoples determined to safeguard the only way of life they want, one based upon democracy, liberty, and the rule of law. Think of NATO as a vast protective shield. Its outline stretches from the North American continent eastward to Iceland, the rugged firths of Scotland, and the harbors of England and Wales, protecting the western approaches and the Atlantic sea lanes. Northward, to the furthest coasts of Norway, deep within the Arctic Circle. From there, it starts its all-embracing sweep towards the sunshine of the south. But first through 1,000 miles of firs and snow to the waters of the Kattegat and the channels that lie between the Danish islands and the Baltic. Away then over the dikes and waterways of the Low Countries, Holland, Belgium, and the plains of northern Germany. On to Luxembourg and the Rhineland, the French Vosges and the German Black Forest, on to the Alps, across and then down to the plains of northern Italy and the sun-drenched mountains of Greece. A line 4,000 miles in length that finally runs east again to bridge the Bosphorus, ending at last where the soldiers of Turkey stand guard on the soil of Asia. From Alaska to the Aegean. Men, guns, planes, ships, and more, unity of purpose. Such is the shield of NATO. Commanders from different countries working side by side we've seen before, but only when a war was underway. To see them do it now to prevent one starting, this indeed is something new. At sea, in the air, and on the land, a pattern of international command. These are soldiers of democratic countries, and therefore they respect an old democratic maxim, that the military are subject to the orders of the government they serve. This too is so with NATO's soldiers, even though the orders they obey be those of 15 independent governments working together. In Paris, at the foot of the Eiffel Tower, is the Palais de Chaillot, NATO's home. And here it is the ministers of the Allied nations meet once or twice a year to frame its policy. But to translate that policy into action is a full-time job for a full-time council and a full-time international staff. Meeting at least once a week is the North Atlantic Council. Here, all member nations have their permanent representatives presided over by the Secretary General, Lord Ismay. This, so to speak, is NATO's cabinet.
The Council will kindly come to order. The first item on the...
To translate policy into action, well, that's quite a process.
The international audit...
The unanimous decisions that are made behind that door are carried out in detail by NATO's international staff. Not large, but specialized knowledge makes up for lack of numbers. Civilian experts from all the member countries wrestle with problems, military and otherwise, of a highly complex undertaking. An inkling of just how complex can be gained from the documents section. Reports compiled, proposals made, minutes of meetings held, records of achievement. This isn't paper for the sake of paper. Here, every page means something to somebody. Logistics, production, supply, 1,001 angles on finance and economics. Or maybe it's fuel pipelines, telecommunications, radio links and radar warning systems, the development of a naval base or standardization of a piece of equipment, how to train a commando in Britain or a signaller in Denmark. This mass of paper represents reality, the effort to give the forces of NATO what they need without straining to breaking point the economy of the countries they're protecting. To do a job that size, one thing must prevail: agreement. No mean task with so many nations, each with an equal voice, each with the power of veto. A task impossible without the will to give and take, and so find agreement. Daily, in committee and in conference, a weight of urgent problems awaits solution.
I have here the financial status report. This shows for the NATO airfields.
The delegates to these committees speak in either English or French.
Et montre que, au terme des programmes d'infrastructure,
Whatever the language, it's pretty technical at times. This is one that seems to call for a little explanation. Nowadays, most items needed for defense are essentially mobile. On the other hand, some things by their nature must be fixed. Fighter air bases, for example. In 1951, the first Supreme Commander appointed by NATO found Western Europe almost bare of airfields that could take modern jet fighters. Urgently, we needed a whole pattern of new fighter airfields placed on the map according to an overall international defense plan. A whole pattern of airfields for joint defense, regardless of frontiers. This was a new idea, but then so was NATO. The construction of over 160 of such airfields, well, that's the business of this committee.
of the works which have progressed in such a way.
This delegate's country is playing host to quite a number of the new airfields. Just now, he's reporting to the other nations how his program is coming along. His country's biggest headache, he says, is finding the land. Each new airfield takes up over 1,000 acres, often very valuable acres. Uprooting people in a democratic country is a serious business. You've got to find them new land, new homes, and respect their rights. All the ministries concerned, he says, have been pretty helpful. Well, most of them anyway.
Et avec des ministères techniques. Mais enfin, en pratique, les acquisitions de terrain.
And in spite of all the difficulties, much of the land has already been obtained and work is going ahead. Now the chairman turns to the question of cost. And as each here is responsible to his country for every penny spent, well, here's where idealism meets its toughest test. Building a modern airfield takes heavy and specialized equipment, labor, and much money. And remember, this is a program for over 160 airfields. As they're being built especially for NATO, the total cost has to be divided among the member countries. But how? Big countries, little countries, rich and not so rich. How much should each pay? Only the common will to give and take could possibly solve tricky problems of that kind. The building of 160 airfields with their hangars, control towers, runways, and technical equipment, that means work for a lot of people and a lot of business. For the sake of fairness, they had to work out a system of distributing the contracts among the member nations. For instance, much of the work in this delegate's country will be carried out by a contractor from another NATO country who submitted the lowest bid. Who said nations couldn't work together? Here are 15 and they do it all the time. Discussion, argument, every point of view assessed. Of course it takes time, patience, and goodwill. The story of that one committee is the story of NATO in miniature. People of many countries giving as much as they are able because of their faith in a common cause. Give and take to find agreement. It's an old-fashioned method, tried once more around this table. And who can say outdated when it works? Since that urgent call of 1951, much has been done. Airfields built and equipped with all that's needed to put the fastest fighters into the air. This field is on the soil of an independent sovereign state. Yet should the need ever arise, it will be at the disposal of all the NATO forces operating under one command. Like many other fields in NATO's program, this one has tenants. A Royal Canadian Air Force squadron many thousands of miles away from home is settling in on this new air base somewhere in Western Europe. Canadians, like their fellow airmen from Britain and the United States, taking up station on the continent. Together strengthening the defense of Western Europe, because they share a point of view with 430 million others, the people of the NATO nations. And these are the people who would rather never make another weapon of war or give another son to be a soldier. But people who have learned from sad experience that in this divided world, freedom depends upon unity. Unity backed by strength. This, then, is why the nations send their ministers, our representatives, once or twice a year to Paris, to review progress made, discuss what has been done, and agree what must still be done to keep the shield of NATO strong. You know, it's just a thought, but bear with it. Here we come together, the 15 nations of NATO, because of our common belief in a common cause, to build a shield for freedom. First things first, but after that, well, surely there's so much we could do together.
Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.